Hello, my ICON friends and family. Welcome back to another in-depth final test drive tour of the latest ICON creation. Now, this one's going to go into a bit of high detail, and to try and keep you engaged, I'm going to break up the format a little bit and get down into the weeds. Why am I putting you through that, you may wonder? Well, the answer is because this is the very first example of a new model that we will continue to offer. So those of you that are already familiar with our antics at ICON are familiar with the fact that we offer new school and old school design packages now with our BR, Bronco, and FJ series. So just like it sounds, old school is designed to be more under the radar, retro, vintage, funky, whereas new school is basically designed to be a little more technical, industrial. Now, either design package on a platform will share the same engineering foundations, and it's generally about 36 special tactile points or elements that we will redesign to create the kind of different vibe that you'll find in an old school or new school. So this is a 1950 Chevrolet 3100 half-ton 5-window pickup, which we simply call the Chevy Thriftmaster. Thriftmaster was actually the series of motors, the original 216, 235 straight sixes, not part of the vehicular branding, but it's a lot easier to say than 3100 5-window half-ton pickup. So there you go. So this is the very first one that we have built in the old school theme, and I am excited to show you around. So let's get right into it. Up here in the front, other details unique to the old school edition, obviously chrome and stainless, and a lot of chrome and stainless. So with new school, you can pick from chrome and stainless or a brushed nickel finish. Brushed nickel looks pretty damn cool. It does require a little bit more maintenance. Nickel is not as durable of a finish, but it sure as hell looks cool. And when you do the IGL coating, the ceramic nanoparticle, that helps. Or if you don't want to blow the money on that, just keep up with it and keep it coated with just conventional wax. So we did the old nipple style carriage bolts for the bumpers, because it's again more of a traditional approach. We did the amber lens, albeit LED, and we did headlights that keep the classic glass lens look, but are actually light emitting diodes within the reflector body. So it doesn't jump the shark, but gives you that functionality. Now again, for badging, we did the original Chevrolet badging on the nose, but the infill quality was non-existent, and it was blue, and the blue just didn't make any sense. We kept the red because it referenced the wheels and just kind of seemed to work. However, we killed the blue and we hand painted that insert in the darker green. Now early on, when we first rendered this truck, we were going to do a tri-tone situation. Now we ended up geeking out on that with the client, who coincidentally is a repeat offender at ICON and a dear friend of mine before he became a client, in fact, for years. So we rendered it out and we kept playing and kept playing and kept playing. So we ended up deciding to do this simpler two-tone, but it's really still a tritone, because if you look carefully, there is a very thin hand-painted color break between the white cab line and the primary body green that is a darker green. Now that darker green is also carried up on the hand-painted infill on the dash where it says Chevrolet, and also on the two-tone gauges designed specifically for this truck, which I'll show you in a bit. For the side badges, so for those, we used the same design that we did on New School because they were still very retro appropriate in their font and sort of layout design. The only difference is, again, we chromed them, and then we took the opportunity to infill these pen lines in that dark green that's also picked up on the gauges and the belt line detail. Rear view mirrors, we stayed stock, stayed retro, but kind of weird. The position of this one has absolutely no relationship with the one on the driver's side, but they actually work well that way, and if you try to make them visually match, they just don't work. With the whole tritone situation, or two-tone or one-tone, that's totally up to you, and in fact, I think I'm going to make the configurator so you can visually render it all those different ways. But for example, two-tone. Logical thing to do is along the belt line, right at that curvature bubble there up. In fact, that was what Chevy offered back in the day. Now, it's kind of a rabbit hole once you start thinking about it, because, okay, that's nifty, but depending on the color balance, well, what if you did the white cab, and what if you introduced the fenders, running boards, splash shields, rear fenders in another color as well? Or what if, for example, as we had originally rendered this one, you did a darker green to a lighter green to the ivory white? So it's super fun. There's a lot of freedom there. Another detail with old school chrome, stainless stuff, more bright work, whereas new school is going to be a lot more monochromatic and under the radar. And pretty much nowadays on all of the Thriftmasters, I've pretty much given up on the early style 47 to 53. I think it was up until 51. I'm sure someone's going to know better and comment. Had this swing down style handle. They just suck. So now we're actually modifying all of our doors and configuring them with the more robust later design latches, which then also work well with the updated catch assembly, which is again a bear claw because the factory ones are paint. Keeping with the bright work trim around this window, we wrap that completely around. So we do the bright work bulb insert for the rear 3 windows. Also for the windshield, that has a proper metal insert. And it just, I don't know, it's got, again, more retro kind of fun charm going on to it. So let's move on to the interior where there's all sorts of cool stuff going down. There's so much going on the interior, frankly. I hardly know where to start. But since my arm is upon it, let's start with the door. So, again, same as old school and new school, but chrome instead of satin nickel. So this is a power window actuator, and it has my nifty little gizmo box. So from the driver's side, if you double actuate down, all windows down, double actuate, all windows up. These, as well as the seat recline hardware, the exterior badging, the armrest, pretty much all of it. I try to put myself in the theoretical shoes of one of my hero industrial designers, Raymond Loewy, and sort of ask myself, okay, if Loewy had designed those details originally, what would he have done? Which was kind of a fun brain game to play and kind of confining my design direction on the choices I made there. So again, these are the same ones that we run in new school, but the chrome finish just sets them up a little more retro. The door panel is unique to old school. I did this vertical sort of implied tuck and roll design to give it that vintage vibe and to kind of reference the original pattern of the stock ones. But these are applied with a magnet system onto laser cut marine board, and that way you don't have the ugly screws everywhere, which just kind of bugged me. Pinstripe, just being geeks, we carried that pinstripe all the way through the door jambs, so they wrap full dimensions all the way around, which is kind of nifty. These lower access panels on the doors are factory, so those are always there, and they just help you deal with the window regulator or whatever service needs you might have. With glass, new school or old school, we don't segregate. It's just about the style of the truck and your personal opinion. So sometimes we do full clear laminated glass. Sometimes, as in the case with this green truck, we just couldn't pass on the opportunity to do like that old vintage Coke bottle green laminated glass, which is, it's subtle, but it's got a nice mild tint going on. We also do the smoke gray or full blackout, totally up to you. Now, the dash, there's a lot of changes going on there. So, steering column, same one that we use in the new school, ergonomically, works out killer. So you've got the tilt functionality, which is super welcome. The original columns kind of sucked. We have the Tri-5 Chevy reproduction steering wheel, reduced diameter. We leather wrapped it in this case because it just feels a lot better than the plastic ring. And in keeping with the design language established by the window regulators, you'll notice that the turn signal stalk ends, as well as tilt, hazard, and transmission shifter control all have that same language. Those are all CNC'd by ICON and chrome plated. Gauges, really fun opportunity. Our friends at Dakota Digital came up with this new Retro Tech series, which expands upon their already really cool functionality, married to a vintage analog look. Now, those guys understand me. So they let me geek out and redesign the typeface and the layout and the graphic. And then we machined the Icon lizard in the center. And also, due to the layered sandwich dial design of these gauges, that allowed us to, again, play with multiple tonal languages. So you'll notice 2 different greens that are on the body are applied to different elements of the gauge design. Then the illumination is all LED and backlit, and there's so much new functionality with this new one. The LED screen is way cleaner and crisper and has more of a 3D effect than the early ones. Plus there's all sorts of enhanced functionality like 0 to 60, top speed recorded, quarter mile. You can get pretty nitty-gritty and detailed on your PSI and your amps and your volts and whatever the heck you want. Or if you just don't care, leave it on Odo or trip meter and rely on your more traditional gauge aesthetic. So the illumination on these is just so cool, and they did a really clever job of integrating the tachometer. So you can buy this basic system direct from Dakota, but not with the art and layout or lizard that we designed for our trucks. But check this out. The tach uses the same indicators for speed, but with this inner ring. So the orange indicates the red line, which is obviously programmable. And then check it out. I love it. That's good stuff. Old school, we took a completely different approach to the dash. So gone is our beloved tap drop to reveal the modern double DIN audio system because, well, it just didn't seem to match. So instead, we kept basically the factory layout. We deleted the radio hole that went up here. We also deleted where the original wiper switch was up top center because no one ever knew where the heck it was. And then down below here, we created this bank of switches. So you have audio, bass, wipers, fan, vent, temp, parking brake, headlights over here on the far left. Now the shape of these, I didn't really invent anything. I took the original one that was plastic and reinterpreted it in metal and then CNC'd the letters so they're debossed and they are infilled. In fact, when we just finished doing that dark green infill, like on the exterior badges and the pinstripe and across here in the center of the dash, then last night driving home, I find myself looking at my oddly generic infill in black on these switches. I just can't stand for it. So we're going to back up, take those off, and infill those in the same green. So the audio system is Bluetooth dependent, running through a digital sound processor. We're running Focal audio speakers. Oddly enough, just 2 in the front and bass in the rear. But it's such a small cab, and the digital sound processor gives us such great control of the audio. This sound system just kills it without having to have a bunch of speakers cut into panels everywhere. So you have individual control for primary system volume and separate control for the bass tone volume. We kept the somewhat useless original ashtray because, well, it was part of the design. So this was another neat opportunity for the two-tone or tritone situation that I think I'm, for now, just going to work out with each and every client individually. So in this case, we thought it was cool to reintroduce the green to reference the main body and the gauges. We also did that on the bright work around the inside of the doors and the windshield frame. The original AM radio speaker now facilitates your primary AC vents. They blow super strong. I also put 2 more of those that are hiding on the outboard lower edges of the dash. So with this small cab, the AC really cools it off in a hurry. It works out great. Of course, our beloved foot possible actuated basketball hoop Mercedes G-Wagon stolen cup holders work quite nice down here low in these kick panels. So as with all the Thriftmasters, of course, we're running power door locks, which you can actuate, of course, from the door or from the key fob. With the carpets, we're doing our usual situations. So, of course, my bodies get stripped, their original bodies, stripped to raw metal. Ills of time are addressed. Any welding, patching, done, finish, re-silica blasted, powder coated in a suspended zinc epoxy-based powder coated. Then block it, fill it, line sand it, seal it, and paint it. After the paint cures, then it goes back into a different oven at another facility when we apply the heat-cured polyurea coating. Now that gets applied to the underside of the fenders, front and rear, as well as to the underside of the complete cabin, as well as the inside floors of the cabin. So that provides not only an insulation and sound deadening barrier, but a significant rust barrier as well. For carpet, both new school and old school are running my beloved Hargarten Square Weave from Germany. So super nice, high quality vintage carpet. It works well with either design language. It's available in a wide range of colors. In this case, we did this nice warm brown, and then we lined it in Dynamat, and then rubber backed it, and then hemmed it in scrap leather from the seating. And then there's one large one-piece floor mat on top of the removable fixed carpet, on top of the Dynamat and the Line-X polyurea. So really nice controlled sound and heat environment in the cabin. Now for the seat. As most of you know, I'm quite the leather geek. My nights and weekends pretty much are OCD time for me to geek out with my leathercraft hobby. So I make all sorts of stuff. Belts, wallets, bags, jackets, you name it. But that rich world of contacts in the leather world opens up a whole wide library of opportunities. Now when it comes to upholstery, new school and old school, I really wanted to differentiate. You guys remember the GMC Derelict that we built? That truck was so cool, it came out great. Now in the case of that truck, I used the original bench seat frame, and we spent countless hours trying to improve the ergonomics and functionality of it. Didn't work out so good, in my opinion. Client digs it, so fine with me. But when it came time to really start thinking about a production intended model with this new old school, nothing beats the seat that we use in the new school. So I simply used it and all the Brightwork CNC details we created for it. Now what I did do though is change the layout of the upholstery and the foam sculpting details to be more retro. So I introduced this sort of horseshoe pattern situation with a little vintage tuck and roll, and then this green leather. Actually, all of the leather with the exception of the headliner in this truck came from our friends at Moore and Giles back in Virginia. So incredible resources. They know all the top tanneries, big ones, small ones, you name it. So we picked this cognac leather for the primary seating, which by design it's a waxy chrome tan leather, so it will scratch, but it welcomes patina. So even if you surface scratch it, you can kind of lick your finger and rub it down, and it kind of becomes one with the general vibe and character of the surface of the leather, and over time it'll shine and fade and crinkle, and it'll just get warmer and cooler as time goes by. So the piping, this leather, I really wanted to introduce the contrast of the exterior paint, so we had that leather created. That's kind of a nubuck leather, so it has a really nice tactile vibe to it. French stitch details, memory foam on the inside, the articulating armrests that we do in all of them, and then of course the ever so popular pocket for your phone on this front plane. Now, other weird leather details, the headliner. So this headliner is a really unique leather that comes out of Chicago from one of the oldest American tanneries called Horween. Horween's super famous in the leather world. I'll forgive you if you haven't heard of him. And because I love Tony, the guy I made the truck for, we went to Japan together last year, and I took inspiration from a cool little Japanese mail pouch that I saw at an antique store there. And I handmade and hand stitched this for Tony. So inside's all his typical, you know, the appraisal, the owner's manual, which no one ever reads, and whatever, all that sort of mundane stuff. But I thought it would be fun to utilize the scrap leather and make this cool handmade bag that I know Tony will really appreciate and keep. But this leather is super nifty. It has super funky surface grain and character to it. It's highly irregular, but that's kind of the point and the beauty of it. And by doing this and deleting the cardboard insert headliner, we create about 3 inches more headroom. Dome light stock, other than an LED insert, 3-point seat belts for everybody. Oh, one more cool detail I did for Tony. So in automotive history, St. Christopher, even if you're not a religious guy, is considered the patron saint of travelers. So all the way back to horse carriages, you would carry that or apply that medallion to your mode of transport. So when Tony and I were on a trip, where were we? I think we were in France. We saw one at Retromobile, and I told Tony the backstory, and he dug it. So when I stumbled across another one in England that matched the sort of tone of the interior leather, it had to happen. So my friends have this really cool antique store that's just off the hook called the Piccadilly Vaults in London. They found this for me and we bought it and brought it over, and I subtly applied it dead center in the back of the cab for Tony. It's really
So here in the back, there's a whole bunch of things going on, and most of them are hidden, which is kind of fun. So we did the traditional stainless steel bars in the bed, which you've seen us do again and again. And actually that's consistent with the new school version, but it's just cool. We changed the species of wood pretty much every single time. This time for, frankly, no great deep storyful reason other than we thought it looked cool. We used African teak, and the staining on this wood is a marine-based satin stain. And we kind of picked it because of its neutrality and because it created a really cool, rich relationship with the cognac leather tones. It just kind of brought everything together. I think with the old schools especially, there's a lot of responsibility to create like clear, cohesive design flow with all the little bits and pieces. For the tailgate, it has a lot of the modern features that you'll find in our new school tailgate, but with a more retro look. We also have the hidden latch. So what's cool about it is just shut it and it's shut. No chains, so no rattle, no nonsense. And then here on the inside, you push and drop from this single actuator that actuates both of the bear claw latches on each side. These are stainless steel. They're safer and more definitive. Yes, I have sat on tailgates on early Chevy pickups more than once and had the chains break or the lasp not be connected correctly just to screw up my tailgate, my bumper, and my butt. For the tail lights, we use the same ones we use on the new school, which are CNC machined aluminum, LED, prismatic, cool like patterns, so the optics are really interesting. But in the case of old school, we chrome plated them for a more old school look. Reverse lights, we hide in this otherwise completely useless rolled cavity in the bed rail ends. And then the license plates, you'll notice on this one, the shape's a little funky. That's because this truck's gonna live in Texas, and we found some really cool vintage restored Texas license plates from 1950, so we custom made the frame to match that. For lighting, we have the same light that we use in the FJs and the BRs, which is a cast stainless steel marine application, waterproof sealed LED. So it just gives you a nice warm bleed. For the reverse camera, in this case, since we don't have the modern double din in-dash unit, we actually hid it underneath the rear bumper. So it's super, super subtle, and it's Bluetooth controlled direct to your phone. So while I admittedly removed it for the photo shoot because it was kind of modern and ugly, we have a somewhat generic adjustable magnetic iPhone mount that is under dash. Client mounts his phone there, manages his audio preferences or audiobooks, music, whatever he's pumping through a digital sound processor. And then when you put the vehicle in reverse, it automatically switches to that app and gives you the reverse camera view. What else can I tell you? Fuel system, we're running our usual stainless steel tank with baffles, sump, tank, and in-tank pump and filter system, so you don't have one of those ever so unreliable frame rail mounted external pumps that just hum and make too much noise. And the functionality of it, it comes with a key, which I think is kind of silly. So I don't know if anyone's ever going to bother using it, but it has this cool little lid with the swivel cap, so you can lift it off with ease. We did a little stay chain on this one so the client can't lose it, because apparently that seems to be happening again and again. But if it bugs you, you can remove it and leave it alone. And that's cast stainless steel too, which is quite nice. Another cool detail that we've been doing on these lately, we machine these super groovy little anchor pins. So the idea is there are 4 positions in the bed where we do not install the usual carriage bolts that affix the rails in wood. So instead, we have these trick little buggers which have a push release. So you can keep your bed super sanitary until you need hold downs and you're hauling cargo. Then you can clip these little guys in. They don't rattle. They've got a nice little Delrin seal and an anchor point so you can run like a spider web or tie downs, or I don't care, run whatever the heck you want to run, but we wanted to think that through for you. You'll notice mini tubs as on all of the ICON Thriftmasters, because the big meets that we like to run for wheel tire are such that they come inboard just a little bit too much to leave that stock. So we form those mini tubs, bringing the wheel wells inboard a little bit to give us full travel, room to drop low, and allow the big fat sticky tires to do their thing. So also on the new schools, we do the super smooth tailgate, and then we acid etch the ICON branding. But one of the neat things about old school is to be more under the radar, less obvious that it's an ICON, more of a like, if you know, you know, but if you don't, what a pretty little truck, smiles and no judgments of money or any of that fun stuff. So with that in mind, we decided to not do any blatant exterior branding. So we did the traditional licensed Chevrolet stamped tailgate for old school. So as with all of the Thriftmasters, we run smog pumps and EGRs and a mile of vacuum tubes and nonsense. It's pre-cat, post-cat, wideband O2 sensors, catalytic converters, evaporative emissions system. They're not stinky, they're refined, they're as efficient as any LS3 is ever going to be. 430 horse, 425 torque, and they're just such a bulletproof motor. We love them. It's the same basic architecture we apply in our FJ series as well. And there's a reason this engine is so popular amongst custom builders. It's reliable, it's light, it's fast, it's easy to service, it's a no-brainer. Other fun details in the engine bay, radiator, old school opportunity. We thought it would be kind of groovy to do these indents, which are reminiscent of the original radiator. What a geek. No one will ever notice, but we thought it was fun. That is made by our buddies at Griffin, who handle that as a complete module for us, including the dual electric high output fans, along with the condenser for the AC system. For power steering, we're running the factory GM Fiat front engine accessory drive configuration, but we are adding a PSC remote canister to enhance the capacity of fluid for the power steering system, because we also utilize that system to create the assist for the brakes via our Hydrotech Hydro Boost brake system. The exhaust system is all TIG welded stainless steel. It is a dual exit. It drops out just forward of the rear axle. Pretty mellow, pretty quiet unless you put your foot into it, and then the gates of hell do open up. Down low, you'll notice a couple more details, such as that stainless steel exhaust system. The headers, they are ceramic coated. We do that for thermal management, so control the heat adjacent to a lot of the plastics and electronics from the GM systems. You'll also notice we did a K&N filter onto a long carb certified air intake plenum that's running the factory mass airflow, because we run the factory GM operating system. I am not a fan of those wide open throttle start stop simplified operating system. Nothing beats the refinement you're going to get from the more complicated GM one. You'll notice all systems and plumbing is tethered and out of the way. There are specialty thermal wraps on AC plumbing to maximize efficiency of the AC system. Those hoses go to a nifty little machined bulkhead on the firewall. Thousands of dollars of AN fittings. That's something I think a lot of people, even when they're building at home, fail to anticipate in their budget. It is shocking. So do that math early on if you're doing your own build. But super high quality, none of that nonsense crimp OEM fitting junk that falls apart in a hurry. You'll also notice we have tethered all systems plumbing as far away from the engine as possible, using really nice double-sided tie downs to anchor everything nice and secure. Always a sucker for sexy connectors, especially from the marine, railcar, and aerospace world. So when we engineered our proprietary harness for the Thriftmasters, same company that makes them for my Broncos and FJs, they predominantly do aircraft, so they get it. Everything down to the cross-link wire, the triple seal connectors, and some of these super sexy, like shrouded multi-pin bulkheads on the firewall. Yummy, yum, yum. So as always, Brembo brakes all the way around. That's 6-piston oversized calipers in the front, 4-pot in the rear with a dedicated parking brake caliper. That is actuated with an e-stop electric actuator for the parking brake, which compounds the pulling force to give you a much more definitive stop. You actuate that with the simple dash switch, and if you screw up and leave it on, we provide you with a ding 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 and a warning light so that you can't fry that caliper. Rotors are 2-piece hats, T4041 hardware. Brakes on these trucks are just phenomenal. People often ask, why aren't you running a Brembo Master? That's easy to answer. Brembo don't make Masters. So Willwood, great company, made here in Southern California, good friends of ours, and we run their great dual reservoir Master in conjunction with the Hydrotech, feeding the Brembos, and combined, epic brakes.
The four-wheel independent suspension is phenomenal. While it's still an option, if you are to order a Thriftmaster from ICON, count on the fact that I'm likely to try and bully you into this four-wheel independent version. Super robust nodular Dana 63rd member, current Camaro suspension architecture premise in the rear, so you even get about 3 degrees of rear steer if you're really pushing the performance. Beautiful weight distribution and layout, independent front. It's just, I mean, any of the ICON Thriftmasters are wolves in sheep's clothing in that they're really kind of modern sports cars masquerading as vintage pickups. But the four-wheel independent is just phenomenal. They stick. They're super comfy. Crappy roads, railroad crossings, dirt roads, anything you throw at it, it's super stable. Just love this chassis. So there you go. That's pretty much it. In the coming months, hopefully by the end of 2020, we will have launched the configurator for the TR series, and it will join the already existing and pretty damn good, if I might say so myself, BR and FJ series configurators. And until I geek out and create another new production line, we'll actually be fully represented in configurations. So there you go. Any questions, reach out to us old school. 818-280-3333. Instagram's where all the fun is, and that's Icon 4x4. Website Icon 4x4. Same with Facebook. Be well, be happy, be kind, be patient, and I'll see you guys soon.